I realize that I'm not a lifelong member of Sartell. However, I think that that is a benefit. I bring unique experiences with me, and I think that is a asset to Sartell. And I'm fine with that. I'm good with it. I hope that you are too. My family and we have lived in Sartell for 15 years. My wife, Christina, and I have a son who's a senior. His name is Devin. I have a daughter who's a junior, Lauren. And so we're in the unique position where we're going to have one child who graduates from the old school and another child who graduates from the new school. The first one's the last one, the first one. My daughter thinks it's pretty neat, but my son, not so much. We grew up as a hockey, tennis, and figure skating family. My son plays hockey, and he plays for the high school team. He's the goalie for the high school team, and he plays tennis. My daughter figure skates and plays tennis as well. So we've spent a lot of times in ice rinks throughout Minnesota while growing up here. We lived on the east side for 13 years prior to moving over to the west side of the river. My education, I received a Bachelor of Arts from Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota, and then I went on to receive my law degree from the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks. I've been a former prosecutor with the Renville County Attorney's Office, where I prosecuted cases ranging from traffic tickets all the way up to serious felony cases of criminal sexual conducts in the first degree. I'm currently employed with the VA here in St. Cloud in the Human Resources Department, and I'm also a member of the Minnesota Army National Guard as a Lieutenant Colonel with the JAG section, the Judge Advocate General's Corps, as an attorney. I have deployed twice. I deployed once to Afghanistan and once to Iraq. And I'm currently on the city council, and I've been on the city council for 12 years now. And the reason why I got on the city councils is when I moved into Sartell on the east side, I saw individuals at Country Manor who were walking and pushing their loved ones in wheelchairs in the streets. At that time, there weren't any sidewalks. So I got on to get the sidewalks in on the east side and help the east side out. I've been on a number of committees. I've been on Public Works Committee, the Arena Board for 11 years, the APO, Area Planning Organization, the Sartell-Leasock Joint Planning Commission, and I've been appointed and served as the acting mayor for 2 years. Again, my name is David Peterson. I greatly appreciate you coming out here and letting us speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Ryan, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. First, thank you for hosting the event. It's awesome to see an active and engaged group like this. I know my parents certainly get a lot of enjoyment out of it. Great asset to Sartell and our surrounding community. A little bit about who I am. My wife and I are both born and raised in Sartell. We chose to stay here and raise our family. We have 3 beautiful young daughters, ages 5, 2, and 10 months. My wife and I began dating when we were 15 years old at Sartell High School. And when we were 20 years old, purchased our first piece of property across from Pinecone here, knowing that someday we wanted to stay here in Sartell and raise our family. And that was a choice that we made. My parents taught me as a young child the value of being active and engaged in the community. We were taught to not sit on the sideline and complain about issues, but rather be active and create the positive outcome we desire. That's what's led me to be active in our community since a young age, and that's what has me sitting here today with my candidacy as mayor. Like many other young families in our community, their parents either still live in the area or in a more growing demographic, their parents are moving back here to help that young family start out and grow. My parents still reside in Sartell. They absolutely love this community center, the amenities it offers. I will jokingly say, but with honesty, that oftentimes our babysitting requests are turned down because there's some activity happening at the Senior Connection that they can't get out of. It happens a little more frequent than we would desire. I work for C.H. Robinson Sartell. Our office is about a mile east of here. We employ 104 people here in the city of Sartell. At C.H. Robinson, I lead a group of highly talented individuals. For those of you who don't know C.H. Robinson, we're a logistics company. So we manage all aspects of transportation within the manufacturing retail worldwide. So how any product gets from the manufacturer out to a store shelf. Outside of work and family life, I currently serve on the Sartell City Council and have for 2 years. I'm a captain on our Sartell Fire Department and have been for 10 years. And then my other notable item would be Metro Transit Commission. We oversee Metro Bus. A lot of you might have heard the changes we're making there with a Connex trial within Sartell, where you won't have to go wait at a bus stop in Sartell anymore. It'll become more Uber-like. It'll be a curb-to-curb service. That's one big item I drove at Metro Bus, is how do we stay ahead of the times or stay with the times. I'll spare you the time of listing out the numerous other boards, committees, and other areas that I support our community. In my 2 years on Sartell City Council, I've outnumbered my opponent 4-1 on boards, commissions, committees, you name it, in how I've represented Sartell. It demonstrates that I've been active, I've been engaged, and I'm not talking about doing so. I have a proven track record of doing so. I've achieved more in the community engagement in 2 years than others have in 12. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask that if you have cell phones, at the last minute I remembered to turn mine on, so spared myself the embarrassment. Anyway, our first question that the candidates have received is, after reading Monday's article in the Times, it appears the two of you share the same concerns and many of the same responses. How does your agenda differ from that of your opponent? And Ryan, you get the first go at that.
Sure. And I would note that the Times did a decent job of melding, and it does seem like David and I are running for the same, and I think it differs. First off, I don't have an agenda. I don't see massive changes that I would do or propose as elected mayor. For the most part, Sartell's in a great spot as a community. I'm running for Sartell mayor to continue serving our community and ensuring we have a mayor that represents all aspects of Sartell, one that can work with our developers, our builders, our young residents, our old residents, our businesses, and our visitors, along with schools. One that, with all areas, makes our community unique and would do so in a productive and, more importantly, positive manner. As mentioned before, I live, work, and play in Sartell. That's a unique aspect. This allows me to look at every decision through multiple lenses that we as a city council and mayor would make. How does it impact the residents? How does it impact our businesses? And how does it impact our visitors? Those are all very critical lenses to look through when we're making important decisions. I'm someone that looks for the potential in something rather than the pitfall in something. Case in point, our community center. New, successfully growing asset to our community. I want to highlight the positives to make it better. My opponent and others have repeatedly voted against every aspect, and most recently considered chopping our operational budget of this entire facility from a $350,000 operating budget down to that of a park within Sartell, which at most is $30,000 annual operating budget. This would overwhelmingly disrupt our community and likely force the closure or massive changes to this $11 million facility. I don't see the value in that. We need to continue supporting it. Sartell deserves a mayor who will actually work with staff versus feud with staff. We deserve a public image which will be encouraging rather than overly critical. People have asked throughout the community how I will support our local businesses. The answer is easy. Build a productive relationship with our local business leaders. Just the other day, I received a letter of endorsement from 11 of our more notable business leaders in Sartell that are endorsing my candidacy. based on the relationship I've built with them in the last 2 years and how I've supported our local businesses. That's what we need to do to encourage other businesses to come to Sartell, as well as grow our businesses we have here. That end result means businesses are taking on more of a percentage of that tax base.
Thank you. David, your response to that question.
Thank you, Dennis. As you sit here, and Dennis, you're right, the Monday's article in the Times, it does give a lot of appearance that Ryan and I have a lot of similarities, which I think we do, which is positive, which we can work together and move projects forward in a collaborative way. And you need to have that collaboration for the benefit of Sartell. And as I've stated before, Ryan's in a 2-year term of a 4-year term on the council. So if I'm elected, I can continue to work with Ryan on the issues that we agree on and advance those issues. If I'm not elected, then my term is up. I'm off the council. So with that in mind, there are a couple of differences that Ryan and I have on the council. I'll go more towards the more recent ones. You know, as I've stated before, I think the most important thing for a mayor and or a council member is to represent the individuals that elect him or her. That's what we do on the council. Now, sometimes it means that we have to be in the minority and say and question and say no to things because the citizens don't want to have it, or at least that's what the citizens are telling us. You have to be able to have the strength to go against a trend, to question a trend. It doesn't mean that you're obstructionist. It means that you question things. And I think that's important. Otherwise, you get groupthink. And when you get groupthink, it never leads to good results. You need to have that ability to question items and grow from there. As you question, you grow, and a better product comes out. Again, it doesn't mean that you're an obstructionist. It just means you have an inquisitive mind and you want to get answers to questions that citizens have. Now, looking towards specific items, as I've been out door knocking, the vast majority of individuals that I've spoken to, one of their top 3 concerns that I have heard over and over again are with the apartments, that there's too many apartments coming up too quick, too soon, and they're very concerned about that. I requested a moratorium on the apartments so we can take a look at it and say, should it be 5%, 10%, or 20%? Ryan didn't go along with that. He wanted to wait until after the election to take a look at that. I think that's wrong. Now, with the community center, I think it's good to think outside the box. We have a hockey rink where we thought outside the box. It's a great asset to Sartell, and it is running without very little operational cost to Sartell. You need to think outside the box, and that's what I want to do with the community center as well.
Thank you very much. The second question that was presented to the candidates is, what do you anticipate to be the most pressing issue facing Sartell in the next 4 years? How would you approach this issue? And David, you get the privilege of going first this time.
We are living in a great opportunity right now in Sartell. We are going to see great changes, I believe, and a lot of growth come to Sartell based on what's going on here. People want to move to Sartell. They want to raise their families here to Sartell. I think that's great. But with that comes a challenge. You need to have a responsible and managed growth. You don't want to grow just to grow. If you go out with the attitude about we just need to grow, that's how you make big mistakes. And my philosophy has always been and will continue to be a managed and responsible growth. That way you can avoid the large mistakes. You're not going to avoid all the mistakes. You'll never do that. But hopefully you can minimize the mistakes that you make and avoid the large expensive mistakes. Now with that, manage growth, you have to take a look at the budget. And again, one of the big items on the budget is with the community center. Right now, it's on par to have a net loss of $210,000. And for me, that's not acceptable. And when I brought that up at a council meeting, and said that we should take a look at it compared to other regional parks, the response I received was, they're all green spaces. But I push back on that, and I say, no, it's not. Look at the amenities we have. We have a golf course on one of our parks. That's a great asset to Sartell. We thought outside the box there. They lease that, and we receive $30,000 a year. They maintain it. They pay for everything on it. We receive a positive $30,000. The hockey rink, I was on the board for 11 years of the hockey rink. They run it like a business. That way, we as citizens don't have to pay tax dollars to have that great amenity. Their budget's very similar to this budget. So you have two examples you can look at for the community center, instead of saying the plan for the finances of the community center is, there is no plan. We're just hoping that the money comes in. That's not a plan for me. Let's think outside the box like we did for the golf course and like we did for the arena. Let's have that conversation. Now, it may not be an exact model of those two, but if we have that conversation, maybe we can lower the expenses going out by 50%. And how great would that be to lower 50%, $105,000 of operational budget by thinking outside the box and having that conversations. That's why it's great to have people from different life experiences, because you bring them into a room, you brainstorm, and you come up with ideas by bouncing ideas off of each other, and everybody wins. That's my vision. That's what I want to do, and I think that's the future I want to see.
Thank you. Ryan?
Yeah, over the next 4 years, I think everyone's right. We will see massive changes, or continue to see changes within Sartell, and we need a leader that's going to lead our community in doing so. Talk about a moratorium, high density. Everyone's talking about our high density multifamily units, also referred to as apartments. The same Times article that we've talked about, it came out almost 2 weeks ago. It was in that article that the first public comment of a moratorium came out, and that was from me. So the topic of moratorium is out there. I think it's something that needs to be done. I don't want to see our new council that is seated in January have to, right out of the gate in January, tackle that issue. I think we as an existing council owe our community that we need to have a moratorium in place on that, so that our council can, new council can get their feet under them while tackling that issue, and they'll have 12 months to do so. Again, high density multifamily is the most critical thing I see over the next 4 years. There is a strategic plan put out through zoning within our community that prior councils have voted on, have approved overwhelmingly. The multifamily is actually within that allotment today. So what is happening, and many have talked about it as similar to a 401k plan, is that it's not performing as desired in year 2 or 3, but overall the plan that you've set out that's supposed to last for 20 years, it's very much in line to that plan. I think at this point, based on community comment, we need to take a little time out and reassure that that 20-year plan is what we want to have. But we are within that. There aren't buildings being built just to build buildings. They're designed that way and to support this future downtown area. We need a leader that can effectively engage our developers and builders in that conversation. One that can bring the cross-section of residents together for a productive conversation. One that'll have the plan for the future and do what's best in the city interest, and will effectively set strategy or policy and not micromanage through that implementation of the process. I think that's critically important. We as leaders of the city set that policy and strategy. We have staff that can effectively implement and drive what we set. Steve Hennis, who served alongside David for 10 years on council of those 12, has come out and overwhelmingly endorsed me and supported what I can do there at that policy and strategy level, and I think that speaks a lot of volume. As for the community center, there are elements of our city that we subsidize. We don't charge for plowing, just as I don't believe we should charge for the senior connection have a spot here.
Thank you. Well, we've got a third question that the candidates have been presented with. And the question is, what is your vision, or what would be your plans for utilizing the vacant paper mill site? And Brian, you're up first.
So I was there the day the paper mill burned down or started on fire. It took nine following days for us to extinguish that fire, and over 100 different agencies throughout the state of Minnesota to support our efforts in doing so. I'd want nothing more than to see that rebuilt, but the reality is a city government doesn't rebuild a site like that. We need to work with our federal and state agencies to ensure that that site becomes the most marketable site in the entire region, right? There's many avenues we can do to support that, to support the next developer that's going to come in to help build that out, and we can work with them on the visioning. We as a government, local government entity can work to remove the red tape. It's oftentimes local government red tape that delays the product or the build out or cancels it altogether. And we as a city just need to be supportive of what that future looks like. I've got a lot of thoughts and vision on it. North Star coming in and what that could be, and I've talked a lot about that in different publications. But the reality is, we as a city aren't going to build that. We need to be a partner to the developer that's going to build that and support them in the appropriate way.
Thank you. And David, your response?
Thank you. This is something that Ryan and I, we agree on this, probably 95% of the information here. We as a local government, we do have to support the building of that, and we have to get out of the way and allow the development of that property. I was living on the east side when the paper mill blew up. It was a travesty when that occurred, and to have a death come out of it, it was another travesty on that. And it was through having a vision of having a economic diversity on the council, we were able to weather that storm. 40, 50 years ago, if that would have occurred, it would have been a horrible hit to the Sartell economy on that. But now we have to bring it back and assist the developers. There's only so much the city can do on assisting the developers. I have said repeatedly in the past that I think a great experience would be to have the North Star Rail there. That we should have that, engage that conversation with state leaders and see if that's a viable option to have there. I think that would spur economic growth throughout Sartell if you have that. It's close to 15, it's close to 10, and it's relatively close to Highway 94. I think it would be highly utilized. You have all the infrastructure there, the parking lot, the building, the third spur, and so you don't have to invest a ton into infrastructure. But it's a conversation to have. Ultimately, that might not be what the developers decide to place on that property, and that's okay. But we should not have conversations. We should be having conversations about it and brainstorming and bringing up these ideas and speaking with the developers in a collaborative way. Ultimately, communication is the key. As many of you know, communication is key to life. You have to communicate with each other. You have to communicate with individuals that you're working with. Even if you don't agree on what should be on the site, you still have to have that open dialogue and communication to move projects forward. And I think that's the role of the city, and that's the role that I believe that we as a city should be taking, is having that dialogue with the continued dialogue with the developers and having the dialogue on the council to brainstorm and try to move that property forward to be economically viable again for the residents of Sartell and reduce our tax base. That's what I would like to see.
Thank you. Well, we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, which is unusual. So I'm going to take the prerogative of asking the first question from the floor. It's going to be a lowball question to kind of get your feet in the water here. After that, we'll open it up to whatever questions you have. My question is, and I hadn't even thought of this before today, before I heard you people speak. What is your vision of a downtown area? I hadn't even given that a thought, but how do you visualize where this will happen and what it will look like? And David, you would be the first one out.
Thank you. My vision of what a Sartell should be and where it should be located is where the residents want to have it. You need to have the buy-in from the residents of where the downtown is going to be. As I've been out door knocking, I've had individuals tell me, David, the downtown area where the council wants to do it is their dream. It's not my dream. And if that's the attitude of the citizens, they're not going to support it. Now, if you get the buy-in from the citizens and you know where they want to have it, absolutely, let's go gangbusters and let's get that project moving forward in a responsible and planned growth so it can be sustainable and supported. But let's not pound a square peg in a round hole and not place a downtown where individuals and citizens don't want to have a downtown. Because ultimately, it's you and me and citizens who are going to end up using that downtown area. And if we don't support it, it's not going to make a go of it. So my vision is what the citizens' vision is for downtown. And I think that that's the most important aspect of what a downtown should look like and where downtown should be. You should have plenty of open forums where the citizens can come out. You should have surveys. You should have surveys on where it should be, what should be included in there, and what you want to have. Because ultimately, you're going to be the end user of that project. And you should have a significant say in where it is and what's in a downtown.
Thank you. Ryan?
Yeah, and I think this is an area where my business background and my business connectivity in the local community adds a tremendous amount of value. I don't disagree that the community, our residents should have a say in that location. I think they should have a say, like they did, more in the location of our schools and where those are placed. But as a resident, yes, we vote with our pocketbooks at local businesses and establishments that we choose to go to. But from a retail environment, if all of us put our business hat on and say, hey, we're going to open up a retail environment, would we want to open that up on the north side of town by the new high school where residents might want it? Or do we want to open it up somewhere centrally located here where I can also capture all of the north side of St. Cloud residents that would come in to spend money at my local retail shop or my restaurant? You need density in order for businesses to be viable, okay? There's been a tremendous amount of work, and David has been part of this through his time on the council in 12 years of zoning and where should that be. So Roberts Road has a huge amount of high density apartments. Those were designed there for the reason to support a downtown in this area. I think at this point, as far along as we are in that process, if we were to say, let's throw those plans out the window and start new, and maybe we should have a downtown by the new high school. The question is, why did we put all of the high density homes and units so close down here? Now, how do we flow that traffic north of town to support our local businesses rather than have them just go into St. Cloud and spend money there? So my vision of a downtown is similar to what has the process and plan is in place today, is that it supports this community center. I look at the Country Lights Festival, which is doubling in size this year. It's a enormous value to our community, and thinking that someone could bring a family down here in December have some hot chocolate, take a tour around the lake, stop in at a restaurant or some local shops. That's what I envision Sartell downtown becoming, not something that's scattered all around town.
Thank you. Well, we're going to open the floor up to questions, or the forum up to questions from the floor. And your question is, and please speak loudly. We're going to have a microphone that came around, but we don't have one.
Okay, my question is, how many parks does Sartell have? So what is the whole budget? Because I sat on park board for 8 years in the 80s when we acquired all of that land free from development to make all those parks, and we were always overabundant of parkland for a city our size. So to compare the center to one park is not as good as to the whole park cost. Second part of that is, if you decide to cut the budget for this beautiful building, what would you throw out to not be covered? Because this is not a business like the hockey rink, and I helped build a Sauk Rapids hockey rink. So I know how they run, and you charge hundreds of dollars an hour for the ice time. This is for a community use as an amenity to a town, which every town has. So how would you save this $11 million building if you cut that budget down to being equal on the first year?
Ryan, you're first.
Yeah. Parks. I couldn't tell you the actual number of parks we have in Sartell. We have regional parks. We have a tremendous amount of neighborhood parks. In my opinion, as I've toured the parks through council, through our national night out, and as I talk to residents, we seem to be good on green space right now. We've got 2 great wading pool amenities. We're doing some great updates to Wadtab Park right now. I feel confident in our current state of green space and parks. I think the bigger question you asked, or your second part of your question, was the community center. If budget were to change, as someone proposed, what would I envision? What would I change? Like David said before, I'm running for mayor. My council seat's not up. Regardless of the outcome here, I'm going to be on council, and I will absolutely not support a change in the operational budget to this community center. It is an asset to our community. We need to focus on putting positive energy into this facility. Last night, across the hall, I held an open forum for all in the community to come. We provided free pizza and pop. We made it family friendly. I had numerous people show up before that had never been to this community center before, but reading in local publications that the attendance is down, that no one shows up here. Last night when I left at 7:30, there's not a spot available in the parking lot because there's open gym going on and there's a board meeting in the other room. This is a hopping place for Sartell, but because of the negative comments that some offer about it, others that haven't been here don't realize the value this generates for our city and our community. I think opposition, if the budget was cut, yes, this room now has to be a rented room. There was some on council that early on when this was open wanted this to be an open room, not a dedicated senior connection room, and or wanted it to be rented. I don't see that happening. I have 3 young girls that love to come here on colder days, rainy days, and play in the orthopedic, St. Cloud Orthopedic kids area. I can't imagine charging for that. Along with our library, it's awesome that we have a free library. Someone could come in, grab a book, sit there by the fireplace, bring the book back later. I want to see us market this more rather than cut it.
Thank you. David?
Thank you. I believe you said that you were on the Parks Commission as well at one point
In
in
the
time?
80s for 8 years.
And thank you for that service. I have been a Park Commission liaison member, so I've sat in on the Park Commission meetings. So I know what great talent that there are on our commissions, including the Park Commissions. We do have a lot of great regional parks, kiddie parks, and neighborhood parks within our community that They are well used, and people really enjoy them. And they talk about going out there and they clean up the parks by themselves. They volunteer to take care of the parks and do that. I think that when you talk about parks, one of the great assets that we have is the park commission, where you can send requests through and have the park commission folks have a say on what should be in the parks, what should be amenities, not only in regional parks, kiddie parks, but in parks like this, on this facility. They should have a say on there. There's great talent on those committees, and we as council should hear from those individuals as a process. Now, for the second question about cutting the budget, I'm not saying that it's an absolute that you have to cut the budget here. I'm saying let's have a conversation about what we do to lower the loss of revenue that we have. Now, that may come with how do we increase the people utilizing this building. And I think, again, you get the park commission people on the folks. You get a task force together and have them come up with ideas. How do you market this better? How do you draw more people to this facility to use it to bring in more money? That way you won't have to cut any of the budgets. Everything that's here would be exactly the same. It would be unchanged, but you're still bringing down the amount of dollars that we have to pay for taxpayers to run the building. That's an option that we have as well. So when I'm not going to speak in absolutes, and I think it's wrong to speak in absolutes when you're on the council or as a mayor. You should be open to hear ideas. You should be receptive to getting more insight from other individuals. How can we make it a success? This is a great building. We need to have it a success, because if it is not a success, we are going to be paying a lot of money as citizens for a building that's not utilized. We don't want that. How do you increase the pickleball attendance? How do you increase that? Let's increase the revenue, or let's take a look at our other options that we have to see how we can lower the $210,000 that we're spending lower. Maybe it's only by $10,000. I'm okay with that. It's bite-sized pieces, but we should have that conversation. We should be open to ideas on how to do that, not criticizing people for wanting to take a look at ideas. I think criticizing individuals is decisive, and I'm not about that.
Thank you. Another question? Yes.
Yeah, I'm Jack McCann. I'm on the historical committee, and based upon last Saturday where we had a historical setup in here, the people that came through were wondering, why is there not a museum in Sartell? Now, I'm a short-time resident here, except I was born here. Joseph B. Sartell is my great-great-grandfather. I've been in Sartell sometime every day of my life. And as we have seen in the past, seems to me that City Hall, probably most likely the mayor, has really shot down the idea of a museum. This could be a destination in this building that would provide money for it. It would get people in here. People that came in Saturday said a lot of them said, as you said, David, we didn't even know it was here. And the advertising was not there. But I'm asking you guys, what's your position on museums? As part of this building.
Okay. David?
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate the question, and I was here when last weekend when the items were up, and I took the tour, the historic tour. It was a great event, and the bus, the trolley that I was on was full, and it was the last trolley, and it was full of individuals. There is great history here in Sartell. And when people say that there's never been a downtown in Sartell, they're wrong. The people who are on the Historical Society, they know that. The downtown Sartell was on the east side, over by the paper mill. That used to be the downtown area way back when. So learning about the history is a great asset to the citizens, especially the younger citizens. There's people, I didn't know it, and there's that person who was giving a tour on the trolley said that there's a whole generation that didn't know the Highway 10 ran right through Sartell before they moved it. And so you're losing all that history. And I think that's a shame because we're going to make same mistakes that we did in the past if we don't know our history. We need to know it. And Jack, I'm not sure who you talked to from City Hall when you made the comment about City Hall or the mayor shot down an idea on it. I think that's sad. I think, why shouldn't we have a historical society or a historical footprint in this building? There's plenty of space in this building for it. Why can't we have that discussion? We should be having that discussion because I think it would be a shame to lose our history of Sartell. And I think I think a lot of people would be devastated that we're on the cusp of doing that. Because I tell you what, if you didn't make it out for the historical trolley ride, it was a great event. And if they do it again, and I hope they do it again, I hope everybody here and everybody at home comes out and goes on that trolley ride or the bus and sees the history of Sartell, because it is a great history.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, Jack, thank you for that question. I as well attended. I was on the 1 o'clock trolley ride. I came in after and visited with a lot of you in this room. I recall, and it might have been a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, sitting at a meeting at the district facility with Ann and some others, talking about how do we, and Ron was there, about how do we capture the history in Sartell. So there's the objects, but there's also a tremendous amount of history that people in our community have up in their head that we need to capture. And at that time, we started thinking, hey, how could we involve the school through an interview process, which has been completed and is a great asset to capture those. We were joking yesterday when we were up at the fire hall with the ORE kids. We have 2 original fire helmets there for Sartell Fire. When we went to replace our new helmets this past year, the company offered, if we gave them those 2 helmets, they would replace our entire fleet of helmets for free. I wonder, and obviously we made the decision, absolutely not, those are historical items for Sartell, but I wonder, in others' garages and other things, how much of Sartell's artifacts are out there and being sold or traded that we need to capture. I know there's a lot that are sitting in mini storages. I know there's a lot that are sitting in personal garages that we as a city need to get a hold of and put on display. The newsletter asked a very similar question, and so you'll see our responses in that as well coming up. I don't see it being a standalone facility. At this point, I don't know how it would operationally budget and fund itself. I think attached to this facility, I think attached to City Hall, I think attached to another entity in Sartell would allow it to be operationally function. But I think it's a group like yours that remains active and engaged is what we need to help move that forward. And I'm absolutely supportive of it. I've got a father that chirps in my ear all the time about what are we doing for the history of Sartell. So I'm a huge advocate of it.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. And yes.
So I was also door knocking in Eureka, city council candidate, and off what you said about that there's a lot of people talking about multifamily housing that they're upset about it. What I notice is when I'm door knocking, it's the silent majority that isn't saying that. I'm knocking on doors and they're, Sartell's great. I love this community. I would never move. My family's been here. I moved here for the schools. I moved here to be in this community. So I think oftentimes we let these loud barking dogs speak for the silent majority. So I just wanted to ask the question about, you said, speaking in absolutes, I think David said, you need density in order for businesses to be valuable, right? And this is going to be our downtown. If you're putting in a moratorium, because I'm hearing that both of you are thinking about that, how is that going to affect businesses coming into the community? Because businesses want their consumers to be right next door. But if you're saying that in the plans, in our comprehensive plans for 20 years, we thought about this and this is great, no public backlash, and now it's starting to finally come into place, and members of the council are seeing that residents are upset with that instead of backing what they had already put in place. So my question is, what would you do if we had a moratorium and then we lost these businesses and this is supposed to be our downtown area?
So let's see. Yeah, Ryan,
Yeah.
you're up first.
I want to make sure I understood the question. The question is, what would we do if we lost our businesses due to a moratorium? Sorry.
You're putting in a moratorium, which is the high density that we have right here in this area, correct? Which is developed from the comprehensive plan that was set out 20 years ago, from what I understand from you guys and what I read of the comprehensive plan. Now you put in a moratorium because you're hearing backlash from residents, but the council, I'm assuming yourself, David, included, because the plan was put in place for a while, agreed upon that this is going to be the area that we're going to have downtown, and this is going to be a high-dense area, which is in turn used to attract businesses so that they have consumers. But you're putting in a moratorium, which is stopping the progress that you already said that was put in place.
So I'll do my best to answer that because I think there's a lot of aspects as part of that question. Moratorium, we legally can only put in a 12-month moratorium. When we initiate a moratorium, we have to have an outcome or an objective in mind. We can't put a moratorium in to simply say pause and we'll just unpause 12 months from now. What we need to look at is our single-family homes. So right now, it costs on average with city services engineering work $40,000 to $60,000 to establish a lot that then can build a house on. And so when we talk about high density and why apartments are being built versus single family lots, there's a huge cost right now for single family lots to be built, where when you stack a lot of people in a single place, you can recover that cost a lot faster. So during that moratorium, we need to, as a city, understand how we can encourage more single family homes to be built, while also determining what that ratio of not only multifamily or apartments, but rental units as a whole, whether that's a standalone home, rental house, duplex, we need to determine what that ratio needs to be for our community moving forward. I don't see us, I don't see a temporary moratorium having any impact on the development of our downtown, of our retail spaces. We have almost 600 units on Roberts Road that are just about to come online. A week ago, the first phase was approved, so they're starting to move in this coming weekend. We've got a lot of growth to occur before we truly create a consistent density around that. There's not someone that's going to say, oh, there's a 12-month moratorium from a business perspective. They're not going to say there's a 12-month moratorium, I'll pull out. The planning for retail and shops to go in takes years. But when you talk about absolute or not absolute, as a city, we have to be committed to something or not committed to it. If we say that's going to be our downtown and people start investing there, and we say, time out, we're not going to have our downtown there, we're going to have it way over there. I, as a business person or developer, just put money into here based on the strategy the city had. Now you're changing that strategy. We're not encouraging any development at that point because no one knows where they should invest money or where they should set up a shop. So in some cases, we as a city do need to speak in absolute to create consistency within our own community and our businesses.
David, you respond?
Thank you. First, I want to thank you for running for city council. Community engagement is always critical, and one of the great things that we've had for Sartell is we have not had a lack of individuals running for council and public office. Some cities, you have to fight to get somebody to run. So thank you. As far as your question goes, remember, a moratorium is not a stop forever. It is a pause. And it doesn't have to be for 12 months. It can be for 6 months. It can be for 4 months. And the concerns that I'm hearing when I'm door knocking is individuals are concerned about it and they want the council to take a look at this issue on there. Now, my thought process is you have two questions going into it. You have questions as far as the immediate, where are we now with how many apartments are, the ratio towards housing, single family housings. multi versus low density housing. What is that in the immediate spot? And then you have the long-term plan on there. And you take a look at the ratios and you see where you are as a council. Now, we may come out of the moratorium and we may say, yes, we're fine, we're good. And we move forward with it. The community then knows, and we give the information to the community, the facts and figures. And that's what I'm hearing from the community, the individuals that I'm speaking with when I'm door knocking is, they want to make sure we're looking at that because they're concerned and they don't have the facts. And that's what they want to have. We owe it to them to take a look at it and bring back the facts and say, we're fine with this. It might be, you might think it is high right now because it's 36%. But we're okay with it because our long-term plan is for 20%, 15%, whatever that case may be. And then I believe the citizens are going to understand that. But you have to have that conversation. You have to answer that question and come forward and be able to take that on as a city on there. Now, as far as the businesses go, businesses think long-term. And they're going to take a look at Sartell as a long-term investment for Sartell. So I think having a moratorium for 4 months or 6 months is not going to drive businesses away all of a sudden. So I believe that, in my view, it's a prudent move to make, to take a pause, take a look at it, see where we're at, if the percentages are where we want it to be, short-term and long-term, and then explain back to the individuals and the citizens through the web, through meetings and council meetings and on our website. Here's what we found out. Here are the facts. Once you're armed with the facts, you make great decisions for the most part.
Thank you so much. You know, we're running out of time now, but if you look at these two gentlemen, between the two of them, you have years and years and years of public service. And I think we should be grateful for all the time that they put in, all of the sacrifices that they make to make our community better. And so let's give them a huge round.